The major impacts in the rumen of Aspergillus is a strong positive impact on the ruminal microorganisms. What has been documented is a great increments in the growth and activity of certain group of bacteria, especially those are cellulolytic bacteria and cellulolytic fungi. For example, the bacteria, the Ruminococcus albus, Fibrobacter succinogenes. It also has been proved to increase the growth and activity of Neocalimastric frontalis, which is a fungi that is important for fiber degradation as well. And also a very interesting to me, a really interesting effect is that it can increase in great extent, not like 5%, 10%. We are talking about maybe 200% or 300%. The numbers of two important lactate utilizing bacteria. One is Megasphaera elsdenai, and the other one is Selenomonas ruminantium.
Hello and welcome to another issue of our Feed Science podcast, brought to you by Wisenetics. I've got a guest here today, Frederick, who is going to educate us on some ruminant information. And I just asked you to introduce yourself, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Robert. It's my pleasure. So my name is Federico Podversich. Everybody calls me Fede. It's a short version. I'm originally from Argentina, but I came to the US in 2017, actually, quite a while already. I did an internship at Nicolas Di Lorenzo's lab. We work with ruminant nutrition, and after that, I decided to stay. And I did my master's in ruminant nutrition and my PhD as well in ruminant nutrition. And we work in several aspects of beef cattle nutrition mainly. We work a lot with backgrounding animals, some cow calf, a little bit of finishing diets, and we evaluate a lot of feed additives and alternative dietary ingredients. So for today, that's why I when I was invited to present this podcast, I thought I could talk a bit about the feed additive that I've been working with for my PhD that has been the last 4 years. And this feed additive is called it's Aspergillus oryzae, which what we will be talking today. It's a fungal product, and I wanted to comment a bit about it.
Okay. Well, that sounds very interesting. So how do you use this product as a feed additive? How's it used?
This feed additive actually it can be in a powder or in a liquid. So you're going to mix the inclusion level is really small. In ruminant diets, when we use the powder product, you use approximately 0.03% of the diet dry matter. So that will depends on how wet the feed is, because a lot of times in ruminant diets we use diets that have maybe 50% moisture if it's a high silage diet, for example in growing animals. And you mix with a TMR. Of course, first you prepare a premix, right? Like any other feed additive. When you have these very small inclusions, it's very important that you have a premix to make sure that the mix is homogeneous, so across the entire diet. So probably your premix will look like maybe 2% of the diet or 5%. So what you do with this type of additives, you mix them prior with something else. If you need to incorporate, for example, protein, and you're going to add, let's say, 7% of the Steelers grain as a source of protein, then you can incorporate all these and other elements that go in a very small proportion, and you mix it there. So then you have a complete product that is carrying your protein, your vitamins, minerals, and feed additives, and maybe it goes at 8%, 10% of the diet. So that's how you use them.
Okay. So like in my world, we use a lot of supplements, a
Yeah,
protein supplement or something to boost corn and soybean meal. So you would add it in a more controlled environment. You would add it to that supplement and then
exactly.
take that out in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. That's. I think it's the same for. I believe I have I've only visited some swine farms, but I believe the strategy is similar in different species, right? To make a premix before prior to add it. I think it helps you to control and get a more stable and homogeneous mix at the end.
I agree. I agree. And not all the equipment out there is capable of doing the. First thing that came to my mind when you mentioned that inclusion rate was, boy, you need a mixer with a good CV to get that
Yeah.
spread out right. You're not going to run across those everywhere.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, the different companies, of course, they have different presentations. There are also some liquid products, and also today you can find pelletized products, or you can buy directly, for example, from the companies that manufacture this other type of additives. You can buy a complete mineral product that may go at 1 or 2% of the diet, so that already, and it's carrying your fungal additive.
Okay.
So you don't need to handle the pure fungal by your own.
Sounds good. So let's go into then. So what's the difference between a pro, or post biotics?
Yeah, that's a great point, because this is something that today it's like a hot topic. I want to comment about that because I believe it's important that we understand what are we talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, often many times it is confused. So I think 20 years ago, if you when I read the literature, these terms are a bit mixed use, one to the other, or everything seems to be the same. In recent years, I think the first meeting was in 2014, that it was released, the first paper with the it's an international group of researchers that they came to a consensus, and then they defined the three. So it's very recent, it's less than 10 years. So the main difference between probiotic and postbiotic that you find today. So the post, it means post life, so it's a dead or inanimated microorganism. Okay,
Okay.
so when you have a culture product like a yeast culture or aspergillus culture, something like this, that at the end of the fermentation it's inanimated and dehydrated, okay, and preserved, but it's not capable of growing anymore. That's a postbiotic. Post, from post life. The probiotic, it means still is alive.
Okay.
So when you feed a probiotic, you're feeding a live microorganism. This is a big makes a big difference, because imagine for your handling in your operation, okay, if you need to keep this microorganism alive, you need to make sure that you respect the conditions in which it will stay alive. And some products are easier to handle. Some bacteria, for example, may form spores and be less susceptible to changes, but some other products can deteriorate and can suffer more. So this is a big difference, I think. And here, I think it comes a question on which one is better, and I'm not sure if we can say one or the other is better. I think they're both capable of giving a so technical benefit or a productive benefit on the animal, uh, to such extent that in some cases they have evaluated the same. So some researchers have evaluated the same product alive and inanimated, and they found the same results. So they found the same um, response when fed to ruminants, and this is because a lot of what we see in the response by the animal is due to the secondary metabolites that are secreted in the culture media and some constituents of the microorganism itself, of the wall and such. So it doesn't really matter if you feed them alive or dead.
Okay.
So, but I think I want to emphasize that both can work really well, but it's important to have research and uh, well conducted studies to support what is being said that they can do, right? Then we know what we really have. And by the other hand, prebiotic is a bit more confusing because a prebiotic doesn't mean it's a microorganism. It's actually when a substrate. And it's a substrate for the host microorganisms. So in our case, that we work with ruminants, it will be a substrate for the ruminal microbiome or the intestinal microbiome. In swine, for example, for you will be a substrate for the microorganisms in the hindgut, for example. Okay, but what can be classified as a prebiotic? Well, a prebiotic can be any type of fiber or sugar or other components that the bugs can use. That's the definition. Okay, so what makes it a bit tricky is that in several cases, a postbiotic or a probiotic can have prebiotic effects, right? Because they can be carrying molecules that the bugs will utilize. Yeah. So just to wrap the I believe the yeast culture and Aspergillus culture, in my opinion, these are, I think they fit very well the category of postbiotic, but because they are carrying a lot of substrates, they have prebiotic properties.
And so what I'm learning from that is, if a guy like me, we pelled a lot of feed. If I don't understand which one I'm using, I could buy it and kill it or damage it in my processing of the feed and get no result on the other end because I've heated it up too much in the pelleting process or kept it hot too long or whatever I might do. And then I'm wasting money, right?
Yeah, exactly. Unless it maintains the effect, which some products maintain the effect once they're dead. But yeah, of course, it must be very well understood whether they need to be alive or not, how long you need to, how you should handle them, how to preserve them. So I think one of the key um aspects why postbiotics uh, have gained some popularity is because you don't need to preserve them alive. They're already dead and they work like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes them very easier to handle, maybe. That
Yeah.
would be,
User friendly. User
yeah,
friendly.
user friendly. Which I really like. So probiotics are great and are excellent as well. But you have that limitation that you need, they should stay alive. And another thing that some difference also to consider is that the live microorganism, like a probiotic, it needs to be able to colonize and grow in the host. And here there is some conflict between the host microbiome and this foreign microorganism that you are incorporating, in which it depends how these interactions go, how your response will be. And in some occasions, not always a probiotic that was selected in one country when it's taken to another, or when it was selected in one species or one breed and you move it to another, it works the same. So there is more needed. There's a greater need to stick to certain conditions, and there is a greater dependency on the conditions. I think when you have probiotics as compared to feeding your own native microbes.
Okay. So now we understand the difference between them and how we need to feed them. So what's the impact of using this on the rumen?
I will stick to Aspergillus because we can go forever if we talk about several. The major impacts in the rumen of Aspergillus is a strong positive impact on the ruminal microorganisms. What has been documented is a great increments in the growth and activity of certain group of bacteria, especially those are cellulolytic bacteria and cellulolytic fungi. For example, the bacteria, the Ruminococcus albus, Fibrobacter succinogenes. It also has been proved to increase the growth and activity of Neocalimastric frontalis, which is a fungi that is important for fiber degradation as well. And also a very interesting to me, a really interesting effect is that it can increase in great extent, not like 5%, 10%. We are talking about maybe 200% or 300%. The numbers of two important lactate utilizing bacteria. One is Megasphaera elsdenai, and the other one is Selenomonas ruminantium. And these two are really important in the ruminant because one of the biggest problems we have in cattle feeding is ruminal acidosis and subacute and acute ruminal acidosis. And what this bacteria does, these two bacteria does, they utilize the lactate, which is a byproduct of fermentation that reduces the pH drastically in the rumen, and they utilize it as a source of energy. So what they are doing is they are helping to stabilize the rumen with their growth and activity, right?
Right.
So if we can have more of these bacteria, it's of great benefit for the animal, especially the Megasphaera, because Megasphaera does not suffer as much when the ruminal pH drops to very low values. Whereas the Selenomonas, the problem it has, it reaches to a point where it will suffer from the pH and will stop working and it might die. But Megasphaera, it does not. And this is of a great benefit. So, with all that, what it does, and this has been documented by extensive work done by, for example, Dr. TJ Nagaraja in Kansas, and several other people around the world. They've done Dr. Nisbe, Dr. Martin. They have done a lot of work in vitro and in vivo. It's quite consistent. The changes in the rumen microbial populations are strong and quite consistent. Right? To me, there's no doubt of the potential use for in that purpose.
So let's touch a bit on how this helps nutrient
Yeah.
utilization and the animal performance. I'm uh, utilizing feed better, I guess, is how to put it.
Well, as we can imagine, right? When you have, it's like having a factory with more employees, right? So now what you can do is you can produce more. So let's imagine the rumen as a box, and the rumen it's like a box which has certain space, and the feed is coming through, right? The faster it gets degraded, the faster we leave. The animal may be able to consume more, but it also will be able to uptake more nutrients from the same feed. The problem we face sometimes in ruminant nutrition nowadays is that we have done diets that the animal can consume a lot, and our animals consume a lot. We have selected for animals with greater growth potential, but they start consuming so much that the passage rate, that is called, the passage rate is exactly that's the rate at which the feed passes through the rumen, is so elevated that now a portion of the feed gets lost, and the animal is not able to uptake all the nutrients. So, for example, in the case of NDF, so neutral detergent fiber, right? Um, let's say the potential of degradation is 60%, and perhaps you are only degrading 50%. So that 10% missing, you are losing. A 10% of the 60, that will be like 15% of loss of what you could have. That is feed that was produced, that was grown, that require a farmer to produce, to fertilize and everything, but now we feed to the animal and it goes in the feces.
Right.
So increasing, I think this is a key um, concept, that increasing the nutrient utilization by our animals is really important in terms of sustainability, for example. It's really important. It has been proven in several studies, and we conduct a few, that it can have an impact on nutrient utilization, increasing degradation of the different nutrients, especially fiber, but also protein, for example. And one interesting finding that we observe in some studies is that when the animals consume small amounts, and by small amounts in ruminants, I'm talking about 2% of the body weight, right? Or maybe less, 1.8% of the body weight. So let's say a steer with 800 pounds consuming 16 pounds. Okay, so that's 2% of the body weight. When they ate so little, we don't see a great benefit, or we don't detect at all, or it's very small. But when we move and we look into animals, because there are different animals have different feed behavior and growth potential, and the intake level varies, right, between individuals.
Right.
When we go to the animals that consume a lot, that they consume 3.3, 3.5%, which this is quite a large amount for a beef animal, not so much for a dairy cow, for example. When we get there, we see a great benefit of using the Aspergillus in terms of fiber digestibility, for example. Because what happened at these elevated levels of intake, the fiber, especially the fiber uh, fraction of the feed, gets lost to a greater extent. So we start feeding the same feed, right? Different animals. We observe a degradation of 60% when they consume 2%, but only 40% when they consume 3.5.
Okay.
This 20% difference is reduced. What happens is, when with the Aspergillus, that drop is counteracted. So they don't drop so much. It reduces, of course, when you move forward, um, but a lot less. The drop is less in terms of nutrient. So this slope gets less steep. It goes like this.
But in both cases, we're lowering cost by better utilizing our nutrients from our feed, right?
We were able to document it because of a lot of studies have been done with this product by other researchers, but we don't have access to full data to do this type of analysis. But yeah, at least we observed this effect in sorghum silage and corn silage based diet with growing animals. And then on performance, here comes another consideration, that not always an increment in nutrient utilization, we're not always able to capture that in a phenotypical response such as growth. When you move to to effects that depend from another effect, right? We have first our direct effect, that maybe was the bacteria in the rumen. This led to an increment in digestibility. This may lead to an increment in growth performance. I think a lot depends on the power of your experiment and how the experiment is conducted, and it becomes harder and harder to find an effect sometimes. It doesn't mean there is no difference. What it means sometimes is that you are not able to capture it, right? That's the first thing they teach us.
Right.
We need to keep that in mind. When we look at performance, the results are very variable, but several studies have observed increments in performance. But I believe in certain occasions it can be related also to a positive effect in health and the overall homeostasis of the animal, which is another part that I would like to comment about these products. They, the postbiotics are recognized to have five modes of action, not only the microbiome alterations, that is one, but it can also alter the metabolism, or have modulatory effects, right, in the metabolism, the immune system, nervous system, and so on. So what we and health, right? Then what we believe that in some occasions a positive effect on health may lead to a positive effect in performance because the cost of immune activation is quite high for animals. And for example, we have a diet in which we did not find a benefit on digestibility, but we observed a 15% increment in feed to gain ratio. But it was a high grain, so high concentrate diet. We were using citrus pulp at 60% in our diet for growing heifers, and that 15% we believe it was related to stabilization maybe of ruminant pH, or maybe of the intestinal permeability, which is also has been documented in some studies. A combination of those may lead to an enhanced health status of the animal, and this uh, ends up improving the performance of the cattle. And because of these effects, it's also been used in different species. This product actually is not new. The use of Aspergillus for animals, but also for humans. I don't know if you've heard before, but actually the first uses of Aspergillus back to the 700s after Christ,
Wow.
and it started in Japan. Yeah, yes, it started. We owe this to the Japanese that they started selecting the Aspergillus to produce koji. I don't know if you've heard about koji, but for sure you've heard about soy sauce,
Oh, yes.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And the miso soup and the sake and all their Japanese feeds. Well, all these Japanese feeds are derived from the first fermentation product that is called koji. It's a fermented feed produced with Aspergillus.
Okay.
From many years, I think it was in the late 1600s, I think, the Japanese already recognized health benefits of consuming fermented feeds derived from Aspergillus.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's so it's very old technology, basically.
It's actually, I think it's really old. So imagine it's 1300 years. We just did not fully understood all, and we still don't, all its effects and how they interact and how they can be utilized. But luckily nowadays, the interest is growing. I believe because of the new markets and regulations and issues with the use of, for example, antibiotics and products like that, that there is a greater interest in this type of alternatives that are natural, or can be considered natural because yeah. Um, so I think we are going to learn a lot more in the years coming.
Yeah, it's very very interesting. And so you've talked a lot about nutrient utilization and performance. Are there other um, effects that you believe this additive provides that you want to mention?
So one thing I believe it's worth mentioning, several studies have already reported in cattle positive effects in health. One was one study conducted with dairy calves. They observed an enhanced intestinal permeability, which is really important in dairy calves because these calves are suffering from a lot of stressor and are exposed to bacteria. They suffer from diarrhea, and the prevalence of these diseases is very high in these conditions, in normal conditions. So they have reported an enhanced intestinal permeability, and also they have observed, for example, in dairy cows, some research have found that this product can reduce the somatic cell count in milk, so less cell count in milk and less inflammatory markers, and as well some other more recent research but everything is kind of recent, but this one is a newer study. They observed a marked reduction in respiratory incidence of disease in growing calves, also dairy calves. What this tells me, because imagine you're feeding something that is in the diet, and okay, we can think about the diarrhea, you can think about a direct effect in the gut, right?
Right.
But when you start looking at somatic cell count and respiratory diseases, then you think, okay, there's something else here because we are going to another location in the animal. So the modulation that this product has in the immune metabolism of the immune system and metabolism of the animal, these two combined, how is affecting the organism to reduce these two parameters. I think it's quite interesting. We don't know a lot yet, so we were trying to learn. And last year I was working in Germany. There is a large group at the University of Kiel. I was invited by Dr. Ignacio Parraguerre, and there I worked with Dr. Uh, um, Kyle Ursen and Gerald Rimbach. They have a very nice setup. And we work with cell culture models of intestinal permeability, and it seems so it's still a work in progress, but there is a clear indication that it has some bioactivity, direct bioactivity on the intestinal epithelial cells. How this works and why, how it's mediated, that is something that we don't know yet, and they for sure in a few years will hear from them. But I think it's something to consider, and it's important to keep in mind that we will be using for sure. We also conducted here at the research station some studies with minerals, but that's still a bit not completely understood. But it appears to be changing some of the metabolism of certain microminerals. But I think we require more investigation before we have a better understanding.
Okay. Well, this is all very interesting. I hope you that watching like what you're hearing. If you do, hit the like button. Um, if you really like it, I'd ask that you subscribe so that you're made aware of more of these podcasts coming up.
It's time for our famous three.
If you don't mind, I've got three questions for you, just real quick, short ones that I'd like to ask. I'm asking one. The first would be, what's your go-to resource within your field of expertise that you really go to when you need some information?
There are very various sources of information. Depends what you are looking for, right?
Right.
I really like the for for applied information ready to use by the producer, or by a consulting company, I really like the extension websites of the universities, right? I think they
Right.
have very, very interesting information. Now, when I need to check into, okay, if I want to use a feed additive, yes or no, or whether if a company comes offering something to me, which oftentimes it happen, or they come telling us that this product has this miracle um, effect, I always go to official research journals. So, Journal of Animal Science, Journal of Dairy Science, Applied Animal Science. I also like Animal Feed Science and Technology. There's several. Translational Animal Science. There's several, but the key is that these magazines or these journals are peer reviewed. So the experiments were reviewed by someone who said, okay, this was well conducted. The conclusions are aligned with what it was evaluated. So it was done under controlled conditions, because oftentimes we see that someone is trying to sell their product and they claim that something happened, and not always is the case, or not always the interpretation is correct. I'm not saying they did it in a badly manner or with misintention, but um, I'm saying it's important to go to official experimentation and well conducted research.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And the more we know and the more we understand, the better, right?
Right. And interpreting data is a tough job, right?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time and yeah.
And I believe it's really important to understand when a product, because we've been talking about for more than 30 minutes about this product, but I want to mention something. It's important we understand when it works and when it does not.
Right.
Because it's the same as if I gave you, if I take a Tylenol now, right?
Right.
Probably it's going to do the same effect in the receptor, and it's going to control the same mechanism today than another day. But right now, my head doesn't hurt, so I'm not going to feel any benefit. Right?
Right. Yeah, good explanation.
Yeah, we need to understand those differences, when is benefit and when is not, because otherwise people buy something, and if they don't have a problem, or if it didn't work for them, then they don't want to use it anymore. And it makes sense, right? You don't want to waste money.
That makes perfect sense. Very well put. Um, do you have a book or a resource outside of the area of your expertise that you rely on for yourself?
Well, I'm more a person to watch documentaries, international documentaries, than a book of expertise. And I read the newspaper every day. That's like a hobby. That's also what I like, and from many sources.
Yeah. Okay. And the last question is, in your opinion, what sets successful people in your industry apart from those that may not be so successful?
I believe it's a combination of things. There's not. I don't think there is a recipe. I don't think I can consider myself a successful person when I'm just graduating next month, right? So I'm starting my career,
Okay.
but I'm happy with what I've done so far and what we have achieved. What I see in successful people, like the models that I follow, I think the people stay objective, and they don't lie to themselves, so they speak with the truth to others, but to themselves as well. They don't like to pretend or anything. Um, that's one important thing. I also believe the people that I've met that are very well known nutritionists or scientists and work really well. I think the best ones are, they typically stay humble.
Okay.
It's amazing that some people that I used to maybe read in an article or watch a documentary or something, and then I find myself in a dinner and they sit next to me and they talk to me as if they were just one more. And to me, that's a great example. And I guess staying humble is important because it allows you to keep learning.
Great point. A very important one too. Yeah.
There is another concept that I don't like so much. I think a lot of people reach success because they know how to sell themselves, not that. And I don't. I feel sometimes in the livestock industry, it's more. A lot of people sell themselves very well, and I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying that it's important to do a good job.
Yep.
I like more the quality of your work rather than the marketing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Those are the products that work, right?
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Okay, well, with that, we will wrap up this podcast. Want to thank everybody for joining. Again, I ask you to subscribe. If you see something here you think other people would like, I'd ask that you share it. Wisenetics will be working to bring you some more stuff down the road that we hope you'll find interesting. So for now, this is Bob. Goodbye and God bless.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a pleasure.